if someone's a naturalized citizen and the paperwork doesn't get submitted. So in the event the documents I'll go back and look at the file, but in the event the documents aren't there, we would ask you just, the new manager, to submit that so the license isn't held by the ABCC.
Okay.
So it's probably kind of moot because he already holds the license in his name now.
Right. But
He's
he's
just
transferring
to a corporation.
Right.
He's a shareholder in the corporation. But then his name would still go on the license as the manager.
Yes.
Okay.
And few of us, the corporation and few of us are citizens.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we have a motion, Mr. Vino?
Close.
Okay, I close the public hearing. May sit down.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the transfer of the package store / wine and malt beverage license from Shakeen Khan, DBA Convenience Plus, to RSS Convenience Incorporated, DBA Convenience Plus.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Vino, seconded by Mr. O'Leary. Hearing no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Thank you. Water rates and capital plan hearing. Mr. Hanlon, are you the spokesman for?
Actually, I'm not. Martin's going to do the presentation as he does at this time every year. We can start with the, want to do the rate or the capital for Martin?
We have copies of the.
Which one do you want to do first, capital?
The water rate?
Yeah. Just to provide a brief overview, I'll just go back to 2004. In 2004, we were in a bit of a crunch relative to the water rates. We hadn't made an adjustment in the rates in over 6 years at that point. And what fell out from that was that we were required to bump the rates up by over 15%. The board, the FinCom, the Water Commission, and the DPW at that point committed to taking a more active look at the water rates every year so that we don't get ourselves into that position where we're running a deficit and doing something drastic to that nature to try and catch up. And what's fallen out from that is the commitment to have this public hearing every year. We did have a workshop last week with the FinCom to overview where we are now and to make a recommendation to them relative to the water rates. And that's the first information in your packet that I submitted to you. Really looked at two conditions. One is the current fiscal year, where we are now. Do we need to do anything within the current fiscal year to the water rates in order to avoid running in a deficit in the current fiscal year? And there's a little spreadsheet I did, says FY 2006 at the top. Looks at where are we budget-wise. In April town meeting, we appropriated a water department budget of about $2.5 million. In October, we had a couple of adjustments to that. We have legal expenses relative to our appeal of the state's permit under which we operate the water system. We added about $105,000 to account for that. We also had an adjustment to the debt service that we hadn't shown in our April requests of about $93,000. And we're also going to be looking to come back in April town meeting and do an adjustment to our operating budget in the order of about $200,000. What that relates to is we typically project our expenses based on an average year of water demand. This past summer, if you recall, from about late June until about early October was extremely hot and dry. What that does to us is it causes us to purchase more water from Andover. It causes us to produce more water from our own wells. Subsequently, our expenses go up. The offset to that is obviously that we're selling additional water too that we wouldn't in an average year. You may ask, why don't you come in and ask for the more money in April and anticipate something beyond an average year? The reason for that is if we ask for, say, $3 million every year, we would be entitled to expend $3 million every year without any anticipation that we can actually collect that $3 million. We come in April, we ask for what we anticipate will be an average year. If it's an above average year, then we come back in April or in a couple of years, you may recall, we actually came back in October for bills from prior year to adjust for those differences in the expenses. So if you look about halfway down the page, that's where the total FY06 projected expenses of about $2.9 million are. Following down to the projected revenues for the current fiscal year, the actual billing from July to December is $1.7 million. That's actually up about 16% over the same period for last year. And again, that's because we had such a hot, dry summer compared to the summer before. Projecting that the second 6 months of the year come in similar to what last year did, and then adding in a factor for additional connection revenues associated with some of the 40Bs that are actually starting to connect to the water system now. You see that our projected revenues for FY06 at this point are only about $6,000 over our projected expenses. So we're saying that we're in pretty much a balanced condition. And when we were here last year, we were looking to something in the order of $100,000 for a surplus to be generated within the water department. You can see that if we didn't have the unanticipated legal expenses of $105,000 this year, we probably would have hit that target this current year. Again, what happens as we sell more water, we tend to generate a little bit of a surplus to be retained in the water department. Based on that, we're not recommending anything be done with the water rates at this time relative to FY 2006. The second page actually relates to next fiscal year.
Mark, before you go on,
Sure.
just a couple of things. One is, basically this request for $200,000 will require we have a special town meeting.
No, I anticipate it will be done at the April town meeting. I know we've done that in the past.
We can make an adjustment in a regular meeting to this current budget. Okay. Sorry.
As long as it's still within the current fiscal year, you can make an adjustment. We did it last April, I believe.
Okay. And then we have, so the $200,000 anticipated adjustment to pay for purchased water is basically a wash with the revenue generated from.
Yeah, the revenue generated actually would be a little bit more than the cost of the additional water. Unfortunately, we had some unforeseen expenses that are going to eat into any of that, what would have been a surplus.
Thank you.
I was going to ask, the break at Central Street, wow, that wasn't too long. Was that this fiscal year or last fiscal year?
That was actually last fiscal year.
Oh, it was the last fiscal year?
Seems like it was 10 years ago.
Is it?
Mine.
So much has happened since?
Yeah.
Not visible, not out in the public, not out in the middle of the road.
That's out of this equation. Yeah.
It is, okay. I was just wondering what the impact of that was as far as cost of repairs and then a lot of water. Go back to the river. We don't get credit for that either, do we?
No, fortunately on our permit to withdraw water from the Ipswich, we helped it, but we're not going to get any credit.
Yeah, that's a pretty big contribution too.
Very much so.
Turning to look at FY 2007, again at the top of the page, we look at what our budget anticipated expenses are. Shows a small amount of inflation growth from last year in our requests. A bump in capital, you see a line for capital that's described below, and I'll go into that in more detail in a minute. And there's a line for that $100,000 surplus. That's what's always been recommended in every rate study we've done, that a water department of this size build into its rates. If we do ever generate that surplus, it can be held, you can build it up, and it can be used for one of two things. It can either be used in future years for rate stabilization, or it could be used for doing some of these capital projects, as opposed to having to bond them or take them out of that year's water revenue. You can actually use those retained earnings as a funding source for some of those. I'm going to skip over the capital, but just the total of that budget request is about $2.9 million. Projected revenues are shown on the bottom third of the page. Based on consumption, the fees and charges, another factor for additional connections. That's the remainder of the 40B units that have been approved in town. It doesn't factor in what may go on down the street at the Berry Center. Again, $2.88 million as a budget request, $2.83 million as a projected revenue for the next fiscal year. You're about $50,000 off between the two. And then the rate comment at the bottom of the page, based on that $50,000 difference, you applied that just on the consumption charges, the low tier and the high tier, that works out to a 2% increase in water rates, and that's what the recommendation that the water department is making. So I have Doc Pecos and Joe Fody from the Water Commission here with me tonight. I believe they could speak in support of that. We did meet with a couple of our members, the liaisons to the DPW, the FinCom last week, and they were also in support of this, and the other members of the Water Commission I've spoken to who aren't here tonight also were in favor of the 2% increase for FY 2007.
Questions, Mrs. Bailey?
So you're asking us here tonight to vote a 2% increase for,
That's our
to take effect in the first billing cycle starting after July?
That's correct. I mean, effectively, the rate would take effect mid-May. We end our billing for FY 2006 mid-May is when we do the water readings and the bills are issued. Any bills issued for FY 2007, we would be asking for that 2%.
So that would be tacked on May 15th forward, because the next bill is in FY2, is revenue for
Yes.
FY 2007.
Mrs. Allen?
Yeah, normally, what you've done is you've heard the presentations by Mark and our recommendations joint with the water commissioners, and then you close the hearing and you really don't vote on our proposals until the following meeting, just in case there's additional information that you ask of Greg or ourselves directly in support of our
Okay.
recommendations.
That's what's been done. Okay.
Yeah, and I would advise you to do the same.
I guess my second question?
Yes,
Mr.
Mrs.
Chairman,
Bailey.
if I may. I know that there is some capital requests as part of the FY 2007 budget, and those are, is there anything missing from that list that you think would need doing, or that's complete and you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, we do have, we do have a 5-year capital
Right.
plan appended to this, and that reflects everything that's shown in that 5-year capital plan.
Right, okay.
We
excellent.
we do make an active effort in addressing the capital to try to make it fit with the budget, so that we don't build a water tower and a new treatment plant and everything, so that it's gonna come as a big hit the same year. So obviously, we're not front-ending all our capital. We try to be realistic about it, what we can get done and what our actual needs are, but they are all reflected in that cost.
Okay, thank you.
The question that I have, that, I would like to get some information on is, on all of the bonding items, I'd like to understand from what our outstanding bonding is related to water-funded debt, to see how that's going. Is that on its way down? This obviously is going to add to it. I'd like to get a picture of that.
There is a matrix at the end of your capital plan, in the capital plan.
Back at the book.
No, it's in the end.
Okay.
A couple of things on that. When you look at the capital requests, the advice of the finance department, if you see where the items from water revenue, fire hydrant maintenance, iron service replacements and so forth, those are ongoing year to year. Forecasting for the amount of money we need to do that ongoing. Ultimately, we want to roll that into the operating budget and get it out of the capital because it's ongoing annually, and that's, Finance Committee said, even though the number is greater than the 10,000, it really is our maintenance items, operational maintenance items as opposed to capital items, because they're funded out of water revenue on an ongoing annual basis.
We're almost there. We're almost
Mr.
there.
Bailey.
Thank you.
I tell you, we've come a long way.
We're in the black.
We've come a long way with the water department here.
Mark, on the 2% request, what would that, how would you suggest we do that? Put 2% onto each tier, like we have a 2-tier system? And would you go
Our
2%?
recommendation has always been to do it across the board like that.
Yeah, I'm just asking, I thought it would be, but I just wanted to check.
We did,
And I have no problem with it.
if you recall last year, we implemented the $5 service charge.